Hi everyone, I am MMS. Today I am going to discuss rhetoric. The word rhetoric has come from the Greek word rhetor, which means ornament. Now, the term is related to the uses of language. While writing any language or speaking in any language, the user of language must use this type of rhetorics. Otherwise, the language will not be effective and persuasive. So, naturally the question of using rhetoric arises. The great Greek master Aristotle is supposed to be the father of rhetoric. It is because Aristotle first time had given the idea of using rhetorics in language. And today we are very much habituated in using rhetoric in the language for the purpose of making our language effective, for the purpose of pleasing the audience. Now, to define rhetoric, I must say that rhetoric is a technique of using language effectively and persuasively in spoken or written form. It is an art of discourse which studies and employs various methods to convince or to influence or to please an audience. A situation where we make use of rhetoric is said to be rhetorical situation. Now, while defining rhetoric, I have already told you that the function of rhetoric is to please the audience, is to make the language persuasive and effective. So the user of language must master these rhetorics to make his language very effective to the listeners. If we consider an orator, then we must say that an orator must have the knowledge of rhetoric. Otherwise, he will be fail to please the audience, the listener in front of him. The specific user of language, the master of language must have the proficiency in using the language in rhetorical style. Now, while considering our English language, we must say that there are so many rhetorics, as many as 50 rhetorics we have to remember for the purpose of making our language effective. Now, if we don't need the rhetoric, then what will happen? Our language will be callous, our language will be prosaic. Our language will not have poetic style. So naturally, for the purpose of ornamenting or embellishing or beautifying our language, we must use rhetoric. So the significance of rhetoric in any language, specifically in English language, is immense. So, as a student of English language, I must master some rhetorics which are very significant. Otherwise, we will be failure to understand the language, to make our language effective and colorful. So, the first rhetoric which I will discuss is simile. Now, what is simile? Simile is a figure of speech in which two dissimilar objects are patently compared with the help of the words as, such, like, than, etc. Now, the definition of simile gives us the clue how to memorize, how to keep this rhetoric in our mind. The uses of words such as, like, such, than will ensure that it is simile. And the comparison will be patent, meaning clear. As for example, my beloved is like a sweet rose. My beloved is like a sweet rose. Another example is camel is like a sip of desert. Another example is love like war is fraud. Another example is my love is like to ice. Look at these examples. In all cases, the use of the words as, like, etc. have been found. If we take the first example, my beloved is like a sweet rose. Here my beloved and sweet rose have been compared. Both my beloved and the rose are sweet. Obviously, my beloved and rose are dissimilar objects. Their sweetness has been presented here, and the very use of the word like has made the comparison very clear. Okay? Now, next rhetoric which I will discuss is metaphor. What is metaphor? Metaphor is a figure of speech in which two dissimilar objects are compared latently. Look at the word latently. Here the words as, like, such, than, etc. will not be used. Naturally, the comparison will not be clarified. It is in fact an implied simile. Metaphor is said to be an implied simile. Both simile and metaphor are same. The only difference is that in the case of simile, the comparison will be patent, whereas in the case of metaphor, the comparison will be latent. In the case of metaphor, the words as, like, such, than, etc. will not be used. But in the case of simile, they will be used. So this is how we can differentiate metaphor from simile. The examples of metaphor are, my beloved is sweet rose. Camel is the sip of desert. Variety is the spice of life. The world is our stage. Now look at the first example. My beloved is a sweet rose. While discussing simile, I have said my beloved is like a sweet rose. But here I am saying my beloved is a sweet rose. The difference is that in the first sentence I have not used the word like, but in the case of metaphor, in the second example, I have said that my beloved is a sweet rose. I have not used the word like. So the comparison is, of course, latent. And here too, my beloved has been compared to rose. And here the point of comparison is sweetness. But the comparison is not so clear as we see in simile. Now, another rhetoric is hyperbaton. What is it? Hyperbaton is a figure of speech in which the normal word order, the grammatical word order in the syntax is topsy-turvy or disordered for the sake of emphasis or rhyme. Look at the definition. There will be a line, there will be a sentence in English, and the word order will be followed as per the valid grammatical concept. But here the normal word order will be topsy-turvy, will be disordered, Now the example is the uses of sweet are the uses of adversity. It is a case of hyperbaton because the word order has not properly followed. The actual word order must be the uses of adversity are sweet. Another example, silver and gold have I none. The actual word order must be I have none, hyphen, silver and gold. Let's take another example. Most blameless is he. Most blameless is he. Look at the subject he. He has been used at the end of the sentence. Most blameless is he. It is not grammatically permitted, but it is right because this sentence has been used by Tennyson in his famous poem Ulysses. The normal order of this sentence must be he is most blameless. So I have made you understand what is hyperbaton. Hyperbaton is nothing but the disordering of the words in a sentence. While identifying hyperbaton, we will just observe the word order. If it is topsy-turvy, then it is hyperbaton. Another is rhetoric is hyperbole or exaggeration. What is hyperbole? Hyperbole is nothing but a figure of speech in which an illogically exaggerated statement is made to describe something. It is made only in the fit of emotion. The statement is exaggerated. The statement is given in an extended scale. Let's have an example. 10,000 daffodils saw I at a glance. The line has been taken from Wordsworth's famous poem Daffodils, where Wordsworth says, 10,000 daffodils saw I at a glance. Now our logic does not permit. How can a man see and count 10,000 daffodils at a glance? Glance means just looking at something for very limited time, few seconds. How can Wordsworth see and count 10,000 daffodils at a glance? It is not logically permitted, but it is a valid sentence rhetorically. Another example is that earth has not anything to show more fair. It is also taken from Wordsworth's poem Upon Westminster Bridge. It is the topmost beauty. Here the idea is also exaggerated. Another example, 200 to adore each breast. This line has been taken from Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress, where the speaker of the poem says that he will expend 200 years to adore, to worship the breast of the beloved, two breasts of the beloved. Obviously, it is too much time. It is too much time. One normally does not need too much time to describe two breasts of a lady, but it is spoken in an exaggerated tone. In an exaggerated tone. Now, another rhetoric is that personification. What is it? Personification is a figure of speech in which an inanimated object is attributed with the actions which are normally performed by living beings. But if the attributed actions are any sort of feelings, then it is called pathetic fallacy. Look at the differences in between personification and pathetic fallacy. Personification refers to all sorts of attributions to a non-living being, the actions to a non-living being, the actions which are performed by living beings, human beings. But in the case of pathetic fallacy, the difference is that the emotion must be there. If we say nature is crying, then you know crying is an emotion. Nature is crying like human beings, and it is, of course, pathetic fallacy. But if we say nature speaks, then it is personification. Got it? Now, let's have some examples of personification. Thus, nature speaks. Here, nature has been personified, and nature has been attributed with the quality of, with the action of speaking. The sky is weeping. It is, of course, personification. Side by side, it is also pathetic fallacy. Because here we see the emotion. The north wind is biting me. It is personification. North wind has been personified. So, we have seen the personification and pathetic fallacy side by side. Pathetic fallacy is also another rhetoric. Another rhetoric is climax. What is climax? Climax is a figure of speech in which some ideas of the same kind are arranged in an ascending order only to have climactic effect. They are arranged as per their value. Let's have some example of climax. Number one, veni, vidi, vici. You know, these words, Latin words, have been taken from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, uttered by Julius Caesar himself. The English rendering of these words are, I came, I saw, I conquered. Now, it is a fine example of climax because the ideas I came, I saw, I conquered have been arranged in an ascending order as per their value. Let's have some more examples of climax. The second example is, we will hear him, we will follow him, we will die for him. This is also taken from Julius Caesar. Now, number three Example is, I lost my pen, my watch, my car, my house. Look at the valuation of these four things I have lost. What are these? Pen, watch, car, house. If you calculate their valuation, you will realize the gradual increment of their valuation. And this is fine example of climax. Next, another example, another rhetoric is anticlimax. And another name of anticlimax is bathos. What is anticlimax? Anticlimax is a figure of speech in which some ideas of the same kind are arranged in a descending order as per their value only to produce shocking effect. The chief target of it is to create comical effect in the mind of the listeners. It is just opposite of climax. In climax we had seen the ideas were being arranged in an ascending order, but in anticlimax we will see that the ideas are being arranged in an descending order. In a descending order. Next, let's have some example of anticlimax. Number one example is, he lost his father, his property and his pen. Look at the three things he have lost: his father, his property and fame. The value of a father does not go with the value of property or pen. Still they have been placed side by side. The purpose of having comical effect has been achieved. Another example of anticlimax is, I will buy a car, a bicycle and a matches. Car, bicycle and matches. The valuation of the three things show the gradual decrement, the gradual decreasing of their value. Got it? Now, another rhetoric is oxymoron. What is oxymoron? Oxymoron is a figure of speech in which two opposite words or ideas are placed side by side. They are contradictory in apparent meaning, but internally one word emphasizes the meaning of the second word. Oxymoron is very easy to remember. Because there will be two words, two opposite words placed side by side. By looking at the oppositeness of the words, we will realize that it is oxymoron. As per example, he is regularly irregular. Second example is, he is carefully careless. Third example is, he is intelligently foolish. Fourth example is, lawless law prevails in the country. Lawless law. Look at the oppositeness of the words placed side by side. Got it? So, we will consider the first example. He is regularly irregular. It is an instance of oxymoron because there are two apparently contradictory words, regularly and irregular, have been placed side by side, but internally there is a profound link in between them. Another epigram, another rhetoric is epigram. Epigram is a figure of speech in which two apparently contradictory words are used in a sentence, either at two ends or keeping a distance, but the words mutually contribute in sprouting the meaning of each other. It is somewhat related to oxymoron, but in oxymoron we had seen the two opposite words placed side by side. But in epigram, we will see the two opposite words placed in a sentence but not side by side. There will be a gap. There will be a gap in between two opposite words used in a sentence. Look at the examples. Number one example is failure is the pillar of success. You know, failure and success are two opposite words, but they have not placed side by side. They have been used in a sentence keeping a distance. Failure is the pillar of success. They seem to be opposite meaning, but internally they are related. If you experience successive failures, then a time will come you will succeed. So it is said, failure is the pillar of success. Another example of epigram is, child is the father of man. Child is the father of man. Child and man are two opposite words placed at a distance. Another example is, our enemies are our good friends. Enemies and friends have been used in a sentence keeping a distance in between them. Naturally, these are the examples of epigram. Another rhetoric is antithesis. What is it? Antithesis is a figure of speech in which two apparently contradictory statements are placed side by side for the sake of emphasis, but internally they convey a meaningful rupture. Rupture meaning relationship. Now antithesis, the meaning of the word thesis is statement. Naturally, antithesis means anti-statement. Two statements are placed in a sentence side by side. The opposite statements apparently bear opposite meanings, but internally they are mutually supporting each other, and the examples of antithesis are, united we stand, divided we fall. You know, the idea united we stand and the idea divided we fall just bear the opposite sense, yet they are just supporting each other internally. To err is human, to forgive is divine is another example. To err is human bears an idea, and the opposite idea, to forgive, is divine. Another famous line from Paradise Lost is, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. These are the examples of antithesis. Epigram, oxymoron, antithesis are almost same in category with slight differences. While remembering, we will consider these three together. Another rhetoric is transferred epithet. The another name of transferred epithet is hypallage. Now transferred epithet means adjective. What is transferred epithet? Transferred epithet is a figure of speech in which an epithet or adjective is transferred from one noun to another to which it does not properly belong. The examples of transferred epithets are, I have passed so many sleepless nights. The plowman homeward plods his weary way. An anxious morning slowly dawned. He was engaged in a dishonest calling. Dishonest calling. Now look at the first instance, first example. I have passed so many sleepless nights. Actually, night cannot be sleepless. A man can be sleepless. I was sleepless. Night was not sleepless. The adjective or epithet sleepless must be used before I. Instead, it has been used before night. So, it tallies the definition. The definition was that a noun or adjective, a tense epithet or adjective is replaced from one noun to another, to which it does not properly belong. Here the adjective sleepless does not properly belong to the noun nights. It actually belongs to the pronoun I. Look at the second example. The plowman homeward plods his weary way. How can way be weary? Actually, plowmen, meaning farmers who are weary of day labor, are very weary, very tired. They are walking along the path and the path is said to be weary. Obviously, it is transferred epithet. Another rhetoric is alliteration. What is alliteration? Alliteration is a figure of speech in which the same consonant letter or sound is used at the initial position of more than one word in a sentence, successively or near successively. Its main aim is to have musical element in the line or to tally the rhyme. The alliterations are made for two purposes. Number one purpose, to have the rhyme. Number two, to have the musical element, musical effect. Look at the instances of alliteration. Number one instance is forest ferny flower. Number two, love's labours lost. Number three, faithful friend from flattering foe. Number four, the furrow followed fray. These are the finest examples of alliteration. Look at the first example, forest ferny flower. The consonant letter F has been used in each words, in the initial position of each word successively. In the second example, we have seen the consonant sound L to be used successively. In the same way, in the third example, the consonant sound F have been successively used. So, alliteration is nothing but repetition of consonant sound at the initial position of the words in a sentence. The repetition may be successively or near successively. Near successively meaning there may be some gaps in between the words with same consonant sound. Another rhetoric is interrogation. What is interrogation? Interrogation is a figure of speech in which a question is asked and the answer to this question is supplied in the form of question itself. What is it? Let's have some example. Can Shakespeare's glory be fade ever? The answer is very clear. No, Shakespeare's glory can never fade. Can I compare thee to a summer's day? Or shall I compare you to a summer's day? Here too, the speaker's intention is clear, the answer is very clear. The speaker cannot compare the friend's beauty with the beauty of a summer day. Another famous line from Ode to West Wind written by Shelley. if winter comes, can spring be far behind? The optimistic line clarifies the intention of Shelley that if winter comes, spring must come. Spring must come. So, the very structure of the sentence, the very structure of the interrogation shows the very answer. In Paradise Lost, book number 1, Satan said, "For who can think of submission?" Obviously, Satan's answer is clear. He cannot think of submission. No can think of submission. No one can think of submission. So, interrogation is a very easy term, easy rhetoric to remember because there will be an interrogation mark at the end of the sentence. But look at the structure. All sentences with interrogation mark will not be interrogation. The throwing of the sentence will clarify the intention of the thrower, meaning speaker. Got it? What is your name? This is not rhetorical question. Yeah? Where do you live? This is not rhetorical question. But if winter comes, can spring be far behind? No. This is obviously rhetorical question. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? This is also interrogation. Got it? Another rhetoric is explanation. Exclamation. What is exclamation? Exclamation is a figure of speech in which a strong emotion of wonder or desire is expressed. There is a mark of exclamation at the end of this statement. It is also perceived by an interjection or such words as how and what. Got it? Exclamation is also very easy to remember, to identify, because there will be an exclamation mark, but all exclamation marks are not exclamation. Got it? The words will normally start with how or what. As for example, how beautiful the rose is! Exclamation mark. What a nice bird it is! Exclamation mark. Oh, what a fall was there, my countryman! Exclamation. Alas, he is no more. These are all the examples of exclamation. So, exclamation always bears a strong and sudden emotion. Got it? Thank you. Thank you very much.